There's always so much going on in any given week, month, or year in a church community. That's the amazing part of being part of a vibrant church, a vibrant community, doing all kinds of awesome things, from the youth and the kids to the seniors and the small group Bible studies and the missions trips and the special events and the fundraisers and the new sermon series and all the things going on. There's so much going on. But what do you do about communicating them all? Because here's the problem. If you communicate all of it all at once, it gets diluted. The significance or the value of any one of those things starts to become unclear, starts to get fuzzy for people. But if you can be clear and direct and strategic about when and how you communicate things, it means that everything is going to be communicated to the people you need to talk to at the time you need to talk to them. And that's why I'd like to introduce you to something that I call scope. I want you to think about the things that you need to communicate in your church and the different ministries, programs, and activities in terms of scope. Now, notice that I'm using the word scope, not value or importance or significance or if you like it. This isn't about choosing our favorite projects or programs, or even how much we personally like or think it is important. Scope is about reach across the congregation. How much of a congregation can or should participate in the thing, the program, the activity. So, scope A, scope B, scope C. Let's talk about scope A. Scope A is something that at least 80% of your community can or should participate in. These are church-wide and strategic events. These are the huge pushes of the year, the things that your senior leadership of the church wants everyone to know about and be involved in and participate in. Scope A. That might look like Christmas, Easter. Maybe it looks like a huge campaign in the community to invite people to church, or maybe it would look like a summer picnic for the whole church to participate in. Again, anything that more than 80% of people, or maybe it might be a strategic initiative like a capital campaign. You're raising money and you want everyone to be part of it. Scope A. Scope B is something in the middle. It's something like 50% or so of people in the congregation can or should be part of this activity. So an obvious thing might be a men's ministry or a women's ministry. Obviously, only literally 50%, half the population can be part of that. But other things that might be 50% could be something like a family ministry or a family activity. So it might be something that parents and kids can participate in together. And if you're in a church with a ton of families, that might fall into this scope B 50% category. The idea is not everybody can or should participate in it, but a lot of people in the congregation might. Okay, finally, we want to talk about scope C. This is a small, targeted demographic. This is a group or a program or an activity that is limited for participation based on age and stage, maybe based on physical location and geography of where that person lives, and maybe some other demographics that make it for a niche group within the larger church community. So you want to think about things like, for example, a grief share group for people who are going through a lot of loss. Or maybe you want to think about something like the junior high youth program. Or maybe it would be something that's a group specifically for people if you're in a smaller town or neighborhood that's part of the larger church community. Only people in that area or group or age and stage can be part of it. And so that doesn't mean that in scope C, those things are less valuable, those things are less important, those things aren't near and dear to the hearts of us as ministry leaders. But by the very nature of what they are, most people could never participate in them. Here's why scope matters. It matters because if you're constantly telling people all the information about all the things, when most of the things that you tell them about on a Sunday during announcement time or in other forms of communication, maybe it's email or something, if most of the things that you're telling people are things that they can't participate in or won't participate in because they aren't at that kind of scope A or into scope B level, it's all these niche things that are really drilling down into the scope C. What it means is you're training people to tune you out. You're literally training your community to not listen to you. because the information they expect will not be very relevant to them, because they can't or shouldn't or won't participate in something if the scope of that thing doesn't include them. Now that said, it doesn't mean that, again, there wouldn't be times that it would be strategic to highlight a youth mission trip as something that would be escalated to a Scope A priority, because it's something that the senior leadership of the church has decided is something that they want to emphasize as something for the whole congregation to get around and to pray for and to give to and all that kind of stuff. There are times and places where the scope of something can change. And so that's why not an entire ministry would be probably put into a scope permanently. It's more thinking around that specific program, activity, or event in and of itself. What is the scope of it? Because then what we can do is target the people we're trying to talk to in all the places we can talk to them about that thing. Here's what I want you to do when you think about Scope A, Scope B, Scope C. Make a list of every possible way someone could communicate in your church. I'm talking a news video, I'm talking an announcement from the pulpit, I'm talking a postcard, a flyer, something in the mail, word of mouth, a phone call, a text message, an email, a specific email, a Facebook group, a Facebook ad, on and on and on. You could probably think of 20 or 30 things, if you get really creative, that are available to your community as ways to communicate. Make an entire list down the side of a page, or maybe build it in a spreadsheet. And then across the top, Scope A, Scope B, Scope C. And make some decisions about which forms of communication are available at each level of scope. So, for example, something that would be communicated on a Sunday morning to the entire congregation must and should be things that are at Scope A and maybe into Scope B. Why? Because we want to talk about things when we're all together that we can all participate in. Things that are large group, strategic, major initiatives of our church. If we go into the minute details about the single moms Bible study that meets on Tuesday mornings at Judy's house, it starts to become something that we train people to stop listening to. So we of course value the single moms Bible study that's happening at Judy's house, but Sunday morning is not the place ideally for us to talk about that. The scope of it is too small, too niche, too specific for that event. And so it would be something that we want to target at people in all kinds of other forms of communication. Now, the beauty of this is that it means you're not doing favoritism. It allows you to decide in advance, before your best friend comes to you, before someone who has a lot of influence in the church, or before even the senior pastor comes and says something matters. You've made decisions in advance. What potential is available to people at Scope A, Scope B, Scope C levels of communication. So even if someone is really excited about that Bible study group that they're doing that's specifically for the single moms or the grieving people together or whatever, we know in advance that there are all kinds of ways that they can communicate that message. There's so many ways that that item, that important thing that serves a real need, can be communicated, but it doesn't have to be communicated from the front, from the pastor, from the pulpit on a Sunday morning, because we want to reserve those things for Scope A and maybe into Scope B, so that we are really targeting the people who we're talking to in the room, and we're not losing people. They're not tuning out from what we want to say. It means we've decided in advance what we want to do, so that when people come, we don't need to feel guilty. It's not personal. It's really what we've already decided in advance. And they can get really excited too about all the ways that they can communicate, rather than helping them just be fixated on the few ways that they aren't able to communicate their message if they're a lower level scope. We want to train people in how to listen to us, to really lean into the messages, so that when we're bringing a message to them, they know it's about something that they can do, that they can get involved in, that it's for them, and that it really matters to you as the leadership of the church. Hope that helps. This is how you can transform the communication of your church into something that makes sense and is strategically getting the right information to the right people at the right time. Hope you liked this week's video tutorial. We're coming out with new videos every single week, so would you like, subscribe, and share so that you never miss a video and so that your friends and your ministry partners begin to know about these videos. Now, a few months back, I went to some amazing ministries here in Canada and said to them, the church in Canada needs help with communications, with the digital world. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and what are we going to do about how to equip and support the church? And of course, a lot of churches don't have the money to hire a communications person, a media team, or anything like that. And so 2 organizations came and said, we want to help. So thanks so much to Compassion Canada and Canadian Centre for Christian Charities for making these videos possible week after week. We hope they help you. If you have questions, leave a comment. Let us know what you want to get training about, and we'll make videos to train you in all kinds of content to do with church communications and Christian charitable communications here in Canada.